Good evening, everyone. We'll bring the conditional use hearing for Windsor Township to order. And I apologize for the brief delay, but we had some technical issues that we needed to resolve. All right. So the first thing I want to do is acknowledge that we have received an exhibit which has been identified and marked as Fowler Exhibit Number 1, which is objection to applicant's objection to standing and party status of Gwyneth Fowler and Scott D. Fowler. Ms. Fowler, has that been distributed to the parties?
I got copies made tonight, so I was only able to distribute it to the supervisors, yourself, council, and objectors council. But I can send you a digital copy of it at the Dropbox.
Okay. Mr. Gallagher, is this something you're prepared to address this evening?
I just received this about 5 minutes ago.
Okay. So then the board will defer any further decision until our next proceeding, which is scheduled for February 29th. At this time, you and Mr. Fowler are free to participate until otherwise indicated.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Gallagher, could you please use the microphone? It's really hard to hear you when you don't.
Yes.
It's just we're recording it, and it's hard to pick up if you're not close enough.
Thank you. Okay, and then I know for our members joining us on Zoom, we are working on connecting a external microphone to the laptop to help with the audio on your end as well. But in the interim, using the microphones does help for them to be able to hear until we get that connected. And then Objectors Council, Mr. Clark, it's your case.
Good evening, everybody. How's that? Everybody can hear me with the mic? Good.
A little closer.
Is that a no?
Not really. Can you go a little closer?
You can proceed, Mr. Clark.
Okay. First things first, at whenever we last met, we had certain exhibits marked 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. I now move for their admission into evidence.
Are there any objections?
No.
Thank you. We call Bruce Haig.
Those exhibits are admitted into the record.
Thank you.
Sir, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Can you hear me?
Could you please hold the mic?
Just state your name for the record, please.
Bruce Haig, professional engineer.
Bruce, in front of you, we've marked as Objectors Exhibit number 18. Is this a copy of your CV?
Yes, it is.
Could you, it's rather lengthy. Why don't you go through the highlights? We're going to try to qualify you as an expert witness in civil, structural, and environmental remediation engineering. And as we will hear, you also have expertise in aspects of substation design, noise, and glare from an engineering standpoint. Why don't you start with your educational background?
I'll start a little bit before that. In 1966, I was drafted into the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I then came back after 2 years in Vietnam and went to Weidman University and got a Bachelor's of Science in General Engineering. Then went back to Vietnam for another year. Came back several years later. I went to University of Missouri at Rolla. We got a master's in civil engineering. Later, while I was in Germany, or before I went to Germany, at the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College in conjunction with the University of Kansas, I received a Master's of Science in Operational Research, which basically is a 30-hour credit hour course with a thesis that teaches you how to think and how to do research. And then while in Germany, in the 80s, I got a master's in business administration from Boston University. I then retired in 1990. My last position was the deputy commander of the Buffalo District Corps of Engineers. Went into private practice in 1991, and I have been practicing since 1991 to the date. I am licensed in 7 states. I've done extensive environmental remediation. I have designed civil structuralist foundations for 49 different substations. I have reviewed numerous noise studies for substations and for a couple of landfills. And I have done extensive stormwater work. One of the projects I did was the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency came to me and asked me to design stream bank protection for the Wissahickon Creek in Amlapie, which is an exceptional value watershed. They came to me, I didn't go to them. I've done stormwater on hazardous waste sites. And that's it, 57 years of practicing engineering and construction.
I also note you have experience as a member of the Zoning Hearing Board in Mountjoy Borough.
I served for 2 years on the Mountjoy Borough Zoning Hearing Board. That was 20 and 21, and then I was elected to Borough Council in 2021. 2020 and 2021, and then in 2022, I was elected to Borough Council. And under the Borough Code, you must give up your zoning hearing position. You can't sit on both. So I've been on the Mountjoy Borough Council for the last 2 years.
Did you have any involvement with the Northern Berks County Comprehensive Plan?
I've looked at the Berks County Comprehensive Plan, yes.
But you didn't participate?
I did not participate in the development of it, no.
And same question for the Windsor Township zoning ordinance. Did you
No, I have not had any involvement in the preparation of the Windsor Township zoning ordinance.
Bruce, let me finish the question.
Okay.
And then you can answer so the court reporter doesn't get upset with me. Have you been admitted as an expert witness in any other proceeding?
Years ago, I was admitted as an expert witness in court for environmental assessments.
Okay. Like I said, we move to admit Mr. Hay as an expert witness in civil, structural, environmental remediation engineering. He also has work experience on aspects of substation design, noise, and glare.
Mr. Gallagher, do you have any questions limited to this witness's qualifications as an expert?
Yes, I do. Good evening, how you doing, Mr. Haig?
Doing good.
Good. You had mentioned you've been in private practice for how long? Since 1991?
Since 1991, yes.
In 1990, I'm just looking at your CV. 1991 to 2001 was for who?
At that time, I was working for about a year for Spot Stevens McCoy out of Reading. And then I worked for the rest of the time for a firm called Technicon Enterprises Incorporated. And then Technicon Enterprises Incorporated 2, which is out of, originally they were out of Oley, PA, and then Morgantown, PA.
What is Technicon Enterprises?
They are a municipal engineering firm, and I was doing environmental work for them as their senior environmentalist, doing work for quite a few banks, National Penn Bank, Boyertown Bank, Core States, Wachovia, also doing private remediation.
Okay, so just looking at your CV, it looks like it was all, at least the points that you have are hazardous waste related.
Some is hazardous waste, some is underground storage tanks, some is other types of waste that are not hazardous.
Okay. And from then to the present, you've been with Whitmore and Haig?
2001, I went out on my own, and I have had my own company since 2001.
Okay, would you consider your firm to be a full-service engineering firm?
No, because that would include such things as electrical and mechanical. What we have done is civil structural, environmental remediation, substation work, landfill consultant.
Is it just you, or
No, there's 5 of us.
there's only 2 people listed on your website from what I saw?
There's 2 full-time employees, and I have 3 more that are part-time.
Okay. Have you ever served as a municipal engineer?
No, I've never served as a municipal engineer.
Have you represented any developers through the zoning and land development approval?
Never represented a developer.
Okay. I see in your CV it says that you've served as a project manager for a number of private organizations or civic associations reviewing land development plans.
Yes.
Okay. Were those for approvals for those civic organizations?
What was the question?
You have listed on your CV that you served as a project manager, principal engineer for private organizations / civic associations, reviewing land development plans and zoning issues, erosion sedimentation control plans, MPDS post-construction stormwater management permits, HOP permits on numerous occasions.
That's correct.
Were those for approvals? Were you reviewing those for approvals for these?
I was representing my clients in front of the municipal authorities on land development submittals.
Were these as in opposition to projects?
Well, yes, in opposition.
So you've never taken a project through a conditional use process or represented a client who's gone through a conditional use process?
You're correct. Although I have sat in on conditional use applications.
Have you ever taken a project through land development process?
I don't work for developers, but I have gone and represented clients for projects that were in front of land development through the process.
Okay. And are you familiar with projects that require state agency permits in addition to municipal permits?
Yes.
Okay. And those are typically obtained during the zoning process or the land development process?
No, most of those permits are obtained during the land development process. Or prior approval for the land development.
Are you a member of the Acoustical Society of America?
No.
Are you a member of the Institute of Noise Control Engineering?
No.
Are you a member of any professional organization related to noise?
No.
Have you received any technical training with respect to noise measurement?
I have reviewed numerous noise reports for substations. I have not received any technical credit for training for noise.
Okay. How many noise studies have you performed in your career?
I don't perform them, I review them, and I've probably reviewed 20.
Okay, but you've never, fair enough, you answered the question, thank you. So you're not familiar with sound modeling equipment training, or you don't have any sound modeling equipment training, I should say.
I'm done testifying to sound modeling equipment training.
You're being qualified as a noise expert, I'm just trying to understand. So you testified that you were an expert with respect to an environmental remediation case.
Yes.
That's listed. In what court was that?
In what,
Was that in court?
yes, down in Reading, Pennsylvania, on environmental assessments
Okay.
for Wachovia Bank.
Okay.
It's listed on the CP
I see that that's the one time you were recognized as an expert.
one time.
Okay. And what other proceedings have you been admitted as an expert in civil engineering?
None.
Okay. What about structural engineering?
None.
Glare,
None.
noise,
None.
substation design?
No.
How many utility scale solar facilities have you designed?
None.
How many utility scale solar facilities have you decommissioned?
None.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Ms. Milana, do you have any questions for this witness? Mr. Hartman? No questions for Mr. Hartman. Mr. Hoffner? I don't see Mr. Hoffner this evening. Mrs. Stabile? Mr. Stabile left her home tonight. Mr. and Mrs. Yob? No questions. Mr. Osenbach? Not present. Mr. Balthaser? Do we need to name Mr. No questions, Mr. Balthaser? Okay. Is Mrs. Balthaser there this evening? Is Mrs. Balthaser there with you this evening?
Mrs. Balthaser is not present.
Okay, Mrs. Balthaser is not present this evening. Ms. Fowler?
No questions.
No questions. Mr. Fowler? No questions. Mr. Clark, do you have any additional questions?
No. No.
Any members of the board have questions? Members of the board do not have questions. Can you please state again, Mr. Clark, what you were seeking to have Mr. Haig admitted or recognized as an expert for?
Civil, structural, environmental remediation engineering, including his work experience on substation design, noise, and glare.
Is there an objection by any parties?
We object.
Please state the basis for your objection.
As far as we've gone through voir dire, Mr. Haig has no formal training with respect to noise or glare, or structural engineering, or civil engineering.
You did not ask me that.
Mr. Clark, do you have a response?
I don't know that in order to meet the minimal standards for an expert witness, he needs formal training. He's been an engineer for 1,000 years, pardon, no offense, Bruce. But he has significant work experience so that he was able to read the sound study and see the engineering issues. He was able to read the glare study and see the engineering issues. And as an engineer, that's what he's going to be discussing. He doesn't need to be an expert or having designed noise studies or designed solar facilities. He's got expertise to lend to the board on his review of their application and their studies.
Mr. Gallagher, I understand and I recognize your concerns. I think that, I do think that they go to the weight of his testimony, the weight that the board will give that testimony. Notwithstanding that, we will recognize Mr. Haig as an expert in the area so stated. You may proceed, Mr. Clark.
Thank you. Bruce, showing you what we marked as objectors exhibit number 19. Is there a copy in front of you?
Yes. Yes, there is.
This is a letter report dated February 22, 2024. Did you previously prepare a letter report to me dated January 16?
Yes, I did, and based upon the testimony that was given after January, I made some changes.
I just want the record to show that I had provided, at that time, Bruce's CV and the January 16 version to opposing counsel so that they had plenty of time to look at it because we had some issues about timing on delivery. This document is essentially the same as January 16, but there are some significant differences. Is that correct, Bruce?
Yes, there are some significant differences based upon prior testimony.
Okay. So let's start with the first page. On the first page, it lists documents that you reviewed.
And just to,
One moment. Go ahead.
just to clarify, I guess it's more of the matter of housekeeping. We were giving each other the professional courtesy of providing any expert information days in advance of a hearing. And I just wanted to be noted, we just received this. It was just handed out to us. So I believe we were in a similar situation during our case, and in that situation, the witness was meant to come back for additional cross-examination, and we would just ask to have that same courtesy. I don't know that we will, but...
And I do believe that ultimately that was not required. That witness was the first witness who testified, and he is not going to be recalled. Mr. Clark, can you identify briefly what modifications have been made since the January 16th version, or is that not possible?
Subject matter-wise, Bruce, I believe, all right, hold on. First of all, height. Was your discussion on height included in your January report?
Discussion of height was partially included in the January report.
Was there a discussion on the decommissioning estimate in that report?
Yes, there was discussion on decommissioning.
Was there discussion on stormwater?
Extensive.
Managed release concept, MRC, was that?
I'm pretty sure that was in the original.
Significant grading as an issue.
Yes, that was in the original.
Noise.
Noise was in the original.
Glare.
No,
Okay. So,
they were not labeled the same way in the original report. I've changed things around in categories.
right, but substance-wise,
Substance.
glare is new.
What I'm prepared to do, Mr. Gallagher, is that if after this evening, if you come back at our next hearing on February 29th and you indicate that you need further cross-examination of this witness, we will permit that.
Thank you.
Okay. Also, based on Toby Falver's testimony last week, in particular on steep slopes, I believe you did make revisions to the January 16 document to address steep slopes in further detail.
That's correct, based upon his testimony, direct and cross-examination. There was some clarifications that I made to make it a little bit more clear.
And for the record, with all due respect, we didn't finish till 6 o'clock this morning, so that's why we didn't send a copy to Sean. Okay. So, have you visited the site, Bruce?
What's that?
Have you visited the site?
I visited the site twice.
Okay. The first page identifies documents that you reviewed. I don't know that we need to bore the record, but he lists 12 different documents that he reviewed from the conditional use application and many of the expert reports, but in particular, what is number 12?
What is number 12?
Yes, it's a document you reviewed.
Number 12 is the PJM, which is the Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland Generation in-connection agreement, basically, between First Energy, which is actually Med First Energy, and the applicant for the construction of the 69 kV substation and for the connection of that substation to the First Energy facility in Hamburg.
For the record, we're going to start on page 2 of your letter report. The topic is height.
Yes.
For the record, and for the audience, section 615, little e of the zoning ordinance, it says no part of a ground-mounted commercial solar energy system or its support structure shall exceed a height of 20 feet. The applicant in the application contends that the solar facility complies with all of the zoning ordinance's dimensional standards. Bruce, do you agree with the applicant's assertion?
No.
Why not?
My experience in designing 49 different substations in Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, Delaware. When you deal with a 34.5, which is the voltage coming off the inverters, to a 69 kV, which is the transmission voltage going to First Energy, the equipment you have and the standards in the National Electric Safety Code regarding clearances between line parts and the equipment and between phase to phase, between the phases, will most certainly dictate that you're going to end up with structures in the substation that are going to be higher than 20 feet. Now, also you have the transmission line, which is clearly above 20 feet.
Have you worked on any projects such as this, where there would be, where the substation would be higher than 20 feet?
Numerous.
Any that would be less than 20 feet?
On a 69 kV transformer, I have not seen in probably the 7 or 8 recent ones that you'd have less than a 20 foot on some structures.
What is it that makes them, would dictate whether it be
Well,
more or less
let's
than
put
20 feet?
a typical 69 kV transformer is about 16 or 17 feet in height. And what you have to do is you have to come off the high voltage taps on the top of the transformer to a bus support or a disconnect structure. And you have to go up, and you have a requirement that you cannot have that conductor within 4 feet 11 inches of any metal part on the transformer. So you're going up in height. So what you end up then is on the 69 kV side, you'll have either a bus support structure which supports the conductors or a disconnect switch, and that clearly would be above 20 feet. We also typically put the transformer sitting on a foundation about 12 inches off the ground.
Thank you.
Further, in the substation, you have to have lightning protection. And that lightning protection acts as an umbrella. So the higher you go with that, the wider the coverage. And typically lightning masts that I've designed, the foundations and the steel poles, are any place 35 to 40 foot high. Then your transmission line. On your transmission line, you have to have clearances from the conductor down to the ground. And that has to include a vehicle and then clearances from the top of the vehicle up. And then also you have to take into consideration the sag of the wires. So clearly, in those cases, you're well above 35 feet on your transmission poles.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Bruce, in paragraphs 13 and 14 of your letter report, you referenced 2 attachments. Are those attachments to your letter document?
Yes, they are.
Could you explain for the board what is, do you want to start with attachment 1 or attachment 2?
Attachment 1 is the National Electric Safety Code 2017 C2 2017 standard, which specifies the separation distance between on the voltage requirement. And it's 1.5 meters, so you convert that to feet, you've got about 5 feet. So your conductor has to be 5 feet above any metal part on that transformer. And of course, the conductor then goes to a bus support or disconnect switch to then go to the other part of the substation.
And why did you highlight, at least my copy, it looks like it's blue. What did you highlight?
What I highlighted in blue is 72.5. You've got a 67. You got a 67 kV. The standard actually is not for 67. It's for 72.5. So that's what you go with is the 72.5.
And attachment 2, Met Ed one-line diagram. What is that?
Attachment 2 is a MED one-line diagram that came out of the PGAM Generation Interconnection System Impact Study Report, which is the agreement between the applicant and First Energy. And if you'll note in there, I highlighted POI, that's point of interconnection. Everything below that, if you go down there in fine print, you'll see 34.5, 67, that's the transformer. That belongs to the applicant. That does not belong to First Energy. So the substation is the applicant's substation. And the applicant has to comply with the zoning ordinance on height.
Bruce, is the Delta Star exhibit relevant to this discussion?
The Delta Star is only an element of the discussion of the fact that it is a typical 69 kV transformer, 34 to 69.
Okay. We have marked that document. That's O Exhibit 22.
And that has a height of around 16.1 feet. You put another foot underneath it for the foundation, and then you add the 4 feet 11 inches for the vertical clearance for the conductor. You're now up around 22, 23 feet. I marked in there, it says 194.5 inches. That's the height to the high voltage taps.
We apologize that the exhibit is not legible, but the relevance of what you're testifying to, if you will look, you can see, it's your handwriting there?
What's that?
Your handwriting on O22.
My handwriting is the 194.5 inches.
Okay. And what does the 194.5 inches?
That's the vertical height to the top of the high voltage taps, the 67 kV tap. Then you add another foot for the foundation, and then you add another 4 feet 11 inches, because the conductor cannot be within 4 feet 11 inches of the metal part of the transformer.
And is this typical for most transformers for grid scale?
I've done probably, as I said, 10 or 12 69 kV substations, and that is typical. You can't buy a squash transformer.
Bruce, is the typical fixed tilt structure relevant to this discussion?
Is what?
The typical fixed tilt structure on Exhibit 12.
That is the solar panel structure for labeling the solar panels, and the way it is currently shown the panels have to sit a certain distance off the ground. We don't know right now what panels are going to be purchased. We don't know the dimension of the panels. They have not been provided by the applicant. So we don't know, or the supervisors don't know, whether or not he's going to exceed the 20 feet.
So to summarize, what aspects of the commercial energy solar system do you believe exceed the zoning ordinance maximum height of 20 feet?
I clearly think that the substation will exceed structures in the substation. Bus supports or disconnect switches. I clearly believe a lightning mast in the substation will exceed it, which is going to be required because he has to design for first energy standards. I clearly believe that the transmission lines are clearly going to exceed 20 feet. And depending upon what the applicant decides, whether or not he wants to put lightning protection at the 634.5 kV step-up transformers, that may or may not exceed 20 feet. I think he probably can put in solar panels at less than 20 feet.
Bruce, the site plans, the most recent version from last October, are to your left on the table. Does the site plan identify any lightning protection?
Site plan does not identify anything other than a location for the substation.
If this project does not have lightning protection, what does that mean?
If he has to design, which he will, to the first energy standard, the substation is going to have lightning protection. And if it doesn't, first energy is not going to determine that it will be a reliable source of power. As far as the inverter sites, that's a risk that the applicant takes, because there will be disconnect switches and breakers that will isolate the transformer from the inverter.
And does that increase the risk of fire if there's a lightning strike?
Yes. And I will tell you, I have not seen a substation yet designed, not a substation. I've not seen it yet in my 15, 16 years working with substations on 34.5s where we did not have lightning protection.
And with respect to height, do you hold your professional opinions to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Yes. Based upon 49 substations that I've worked on.
The next topic is decommissioning estimate.
Yes.
And for the board, that is subsection C, paragraphs 15 through 21. For the audience, section 615 little o of the zoning ordinance addresses decommissioning. And it says, upon removal, the site shall be cleaned, restored, and revegetated to blend with the existing surrounding vegetation and to prevent soil erosion and downgraded sedimentation. The applicant, in their narrative, states Mountain Trail plans to decommission the solar facility at the end of its productive life and will post a removal bond in compliance with section 615.0 of the zoning ordinance. The applicant has also provided to the board exhibit number 11, a decommissioning estimate. Bruce, did you review exhibit 11, the decommissioning estimate?
Yes.
In your opinion, does the estimate adequately address, upon removal, the cleaning, restoration, and revegetation to blend with the existing surrounding vegetation?
The estimate does not adequately address the issue of restoring to original conditions.
Does the estimate adequately address, upon removal, prevention of soil erosion and down gradient sedimentation?
You will still have the existing detention basins there, but it's not specifically addressed in the narrative or in the stormwater report or the decommissioning report.
The decommissioning estimate report says mass grading is not anticipated since the initial project will not alter topography significantly. Do you agree with that statement?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
I took the plans and had one of my young EITs who was a whiz at computers go in and look where the mass grading was. And we calculated that there is approximately, I need to pick all the areas, 58 acres where they're grading to redirect stormwater to the proposed post-construction stormwater management basins. Now, I'm doing this off of PDF files, bringing them in as a insert to AutoCAD. We had asked for the AutoCAD files and we did not receive them. So what I've done is we just established a boundary of the mass grading, and I consider mass grading where it appears that the cuts or the fills were up to 2 foot in depth.
Bruce, your report has comments about the decommissioning estimate. Do you want to walk through the paragraphs of your report that address the decommissioning estimate?
Reference site restoration, which should be part of the decommissioning. The top 14 inches is the agricultural soils. And if you're doing a cut to 2 feet, you're taking away the agricultural soils. What he has proposed in his decommission report is coming in and tilling 6 inches. He's not proposing putting any topsoil back in. 8 feet horizon is that good loam, that's 7 inches. And then the next layer is the BW1 horizon, which is a channeling loam, which means there's a little bit of small pebbles in there. The decommissioning report does not include any costs for environmental assessment or remediation of the substation. And it's standard practice that when you decommission a substation, you do an environmental assessment to make sure that there's no contamination. Your typical 69 kV transformer has about 6,000 gallons of oil in it, and they do leak. So there's no cost in there. The decommissioning estimate does not include any cleaning out of the sediment or the amended soils that are in the managed release control PMPs, the stormwater detention basins. So then the township will assume responsibility, or somebody will assume responsibility for those basins, and they have not been properly decommissioned. There's an estimate in there for salvage value of the steel. Township should not be in the business of being a salvage junkyard or a salvage collector. And we cannot tell what the value of that's going to be 40 years from now. The applicant's proposing a total of 6.65 acres of roads. He's proposing leaving them if the township wants. You can't turn the road back into farmland if there's roads out there. And then I did mention about the fact he's proposing just tilling 6 inches. He's not proposing bringing in any new topsoil loam that is now disturbed and exposed, which would be a major cost. And I estimated that could be up to 65 acres.
The ordinance also says that the system owner shall post a bond or other financial security in a form acceptable to the township. Bruce, in your professional opinion, would you recommend that the township accept the estimate prepared by the applicant?
Absolutely not.
And is the basis for that opinion set forth in paragraphs 15 through 21 of your letter report?
Yes, it is.
Do you want to add anything to your opinion on that?
I think it needs to be a third party. I don't think R&M means is a good cost estimating tool. There's much better estimating tools out there now. I think you've got to look at the substation and talk to somebody who is in the substation design business as to what it costs to decommission. And they can be, cost can be very significant.
designer report on page 3, beginning with letter D through paragraphs 27 will be the first aspects of this discussion. The applicant's narrative with respect to stormwater states the following, Bruce. The applicant has performed investigation into the hydrological conditions of the subject property, which informed enhanced stormwater runoff mitigation measures that have been taken across the solar facility. The applicant prepared in Exhibit 32 a 927-page stormwater management report. Bruce, did you review the stormwater management report?
Whole 927 pages about 4 times.
The report purports to provide details on how the proposed stormwater management design will be utilized to achieve compliance with the township's stormwater management ordinance. The conclusions state the design meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance and something called the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, which we will refer to as DEP, FAQ. FAQ stands for frequently asked questions. Bruce, do you have concerns with the stormwater management design as proposed by the applicant?
Let me back up for a second. The stormwater management report was done in a program called HydroCAD. I took the training on HydroCAD in 2 days. I use HydroCAD in my business. I've used it for numerous occasions. The report, or the HydroCAD model, and I won't go into the technical aspects, but the HydroCAD model is not compliant with the HydroCAD program requirements. Now, I have significant concerns about the fact that the applicant is proposing management release control. Let me give you a little bit of history. Management release control was a fairly new concept for stormwater management, where the DEP recognized that we have some sites that will not infiltrate. The soils just will not infiltrate. So DEP then came up with a set of criteria and the frequently asked questions as to, can we use a different concept other than strictly the old runoff into a basin, hold the volume, and release it at a low rate. The first criteria of management release control is that the site will not infiltrate. You have to do a thorough site investigation. That includes geology, sinkholes, karst formations, test pits, and a ton of infiltration tests. He's done basically none of those. There's some references to geology in the Cultural Resources Report and the Wetland Study Report. There's been no test pits. There's been no infiltration testing. So it doesn't qualify as even being a candidate for managed release control until he does that study. The second aspect is that it has to be a site that does not infiltrate. The soils on site are what we call Category B soils. They're categorized that way by the Natural Resource Conservation Service. A Category B soil will infiltrate at between 0.2 and 0.8 inches per hour. DEP only requires 0.1. So on face value, when you look at the soils, and they've been mapped in both the, I believe the Cultural Resources Report, but definitely in the Wetland Delineation Report, those soils should infiltrate. The third criteria is that a management release basin has a drainage area of 3 acres and only 1.5 acres impervious surface. That's the criteria. He's got 330 acres. If you look at 3 acres per basin, he should have 110 basins. He's got 15. He's got 75 acres of impervious soil. If you apply the 1.5 acres per basin, he should have 50. He's got 15. The other thing is that in managed release, you're supposed to treat the 2-year storm for water quality and volume reduction in the managed release control basin, and you're supposed to bypass the higher storm events. He's not doing that. He's treating them all in the same basin. Part of the managed release concept is that you have a low head on the basin, no more than 4 to 6 feet. He's got basins that are 8 feet deep. So not only has he never done a thorough site investigation, he doesn't qualify because he doesn't have enough basins. He hasn't done any any infiltration testing, and the basins aren't designed to meet the requirements of low head. What he's basically done is taken a dry extended detention basin, put some amended soils in the bottom, and said this is managed release control. It's not.
Mr. Clark, it's been reported to me that we're having some technical difficulties with the Zoom audio, so I'd like to take about a 10-minute recess at this point, so we can address that. I think this might be a good breaking point. Okay. So we'll be in recess for 10 minutes.
The audio all sorted out?
What I suggested is it's all like it's very animated or something. You know, it's not just like that, it's just moving all around. So the cord could be
Loose inside the connector, maybe.
a little bit of, a little bit of connector noise. Plus you've got the other one, like so.
Well, hopefully it works.
Oh, thank you, Bob.
I thought maybe because they plugged the snowball thing in, that it wasn't like plugged in all the way, maybe. I don't know. Because they have like the regular mic and then the snowball mic.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I don't know. I don't know how they have the Zoom set up.
She wasn't expecting you to come in, you weren't expecting to see the ghost.
Yeah, the acoustics are pretty bad. Well, at least there's carpet.
Yeah, that helps.
Remember Spooky Notes? Yeah. How I echoed off the floor?
Oh yeah.
Bad.
A year is actually quite fresh.
All right, we're going to go back on the record. Mr. Cluck, you may continue your direct examination.
Bruce, let's discuss steep slopes. Last Thursday, Toby Fogger identified in his testimony from the wetland report the types of prime soils, their slopes, and a number of acres. Does your letter report also address steep slopes?
Yes.
We also reviewed last week there are specific purposes for the agricultural zoning district. One of those specific purposes includes minimizing development on steep slopes. In your opinion, does the proposed stormwater management design minimize development on steep slopes?
No.
Are there a significant number of acres with steep slopes greater than 15%?
I believe there are, yes, because I believe these are the slopes that are being regraded. I believe they're being regraded to take them from above 15 or 15 to 25 down to below 15.
Looking at the conditional use plans to the left on the table, do the plans identify slopes greater than 15%?
There is a symbol for steep slope, but I believe it's 25% because that's what the township engineer requested. There is no delineation for slopes between 15 and 25. And even that what slopes they are.
Does the DEP FAQ guidance document address development on steep slopes,
Yes.
and how so?
Let me pull the guidance document and I'll quote it exactly.
That's the ENS document,
No, that's the
the FAQ document.
FAQ document.
Okay. The FAQ document that you're referring to is really an exhibit number 10 for the board and everybody's reference. This is Chapter 102 permitting for solar panel farms, FAQ, revised April 30, 2021, version 1.1. Is that what we're talking about, Bruce?
Yes.
But we'll note, and we noted earlier, that the actual stormwater management report cites an earlier version of that guidance document. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But we're going to talk about the actual guidance document in effect at this time?
Yes.
Go ahead.
FAQ 11, the slope of my solar panel farm project is greater than 15%. Can the project be permitted? Solar panel farm projects completed on slopes greater than 15% can be permitted. How they would be pushing the threshold of current constructability. In fact, especially if any substantial earth disturbance is proposed. This is exactly what the applicant is proposing.
For the record, this is also paragraph 26 of the exhibit of your letter report.
Go back one page. Yes.
Did I cut you off, or did you want to go?
No, I just said yes. And as I also say in paragraph 27, he's not done the investigations required even to get into the issue of whether or not he's going to be in slopes 15% or greater.
Does DEP have guidance document, another guidance document on construction on steep slopes greater than 15%?
Do they have another document on it? They have in the erosion sediment pollution control program manual. There is some guidance on velocities for steep slopes, as what is permissible. And in the Natural Resource Conservation Services, Part 630, which is the National Engineering Handbook for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, there is a correlation between velocity and slope. And basically what those two documents do is, it then says your velocity, maximum velocity that you can have on a steep slope in a shaded area, which is under the panels, is 3 feet per second. And NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Services, has then calibrated that back to a slope, and that is a slope of 15%. So DEP says you're not supposed to do it if your velocity is over 3 feet per second, because that will start causing accelerated erosion, especially where you have it in a shaded area underneath the panels. And then NRSC says, all right, that 3 feet per second on a pasture or a meadow, which the applicant is proposing, equates to a 15% slope. So when you put the two documents together, the engineer decision is that I don't put panels on slopes greater than 15%.
Bruce, you had me mark as Exhibit 023 an excerpt from the DEP Erosion and Sediment Pollution Control Program Manual. Do you have a copy of that?
I do have a copy of that. That's the one I just mentioned. That's the Erosion Pollution Sediment Control Manual and also the NRCS Part 630, Chapter 15. And when you put the two of the documents together, it says, don't put solar panels on slopes. Or don't put shaded areas, which would be a solar panel on a slope greater than 50%.
Okay, so let's walk through exhibit 23.
Okay.
We marked it for a reason, so let's discuss it.
All right, first table 6.4, number 1.
Right, what does that mean? Maximum permissible velocities for channels lined with vegetation. What does that mean?
That's the ground surface that has vegetation in it versus stone, concrete, or some other line.
And that would likely be what's underneath the solar panels?
That's what's under the solar panels because the applicant's stormwater management report says that all this runoff is shallow concentrated flow, which would be similar to what is in this table. It's exactly the same.
And I believe you testified because of the placement of the solar panels underneath the panels, that would be shaded?
Because of the placement of the solar panels, the ground surface underneath it is shaded. And note 1 says a velocity of 3 feet per second should be the maximum because of shade.
What does it mean, a velocity of 3 feet per second?
That's how fast the water is moving. Water moves based upon the surface and the slope.
Stormwater.
Stormwater. Free flowing, not under pressure.
Right. So, the next page, part 630, Hydrology National Engineering Handbook. What is this?
This is the U.S. Department of Agricultural handbook that they give to all their field engineers in all the states in the United States. And in fact, USDA, Natural Resource Conservation Services, developed the hydrology programs that we use today.
And what is time of concentration referred to?
In Chapter 15, time concentrations, how you determine how long it takes to go from a point in the array to the detention basin. And in calculating that, you have to calculate the travel time for your shallow concentrated flow. So you look at the slope, you look at the ground cover, and if you have a ground cover of pasture meadows, and you have a slope of 15%, then your velocity is 3 feet per second, which is the same as where DEP says we don't want you exceeding it because it's shaded.
In order to determine time of concentration, is it your practice and the practice of environmental engineers to actually walk the site?
I have walked this site. Yes, it is, and I'll tell you the reason why. Topographic maps are in 2-foot intervals. So I have a contour line that says 630, I have a contour line that says 628. Between those two contour lines, or it has 632, 630, 628. Between those two contour lines, the ground surface is not perfectly on a slope. You can have depressions, you can have little hills. So if I go between 630 and 628, the actual elevation could be 631.9, or it could be 626.1. You have what we call depressed storage. That storage that sits out there in those fields, in those little areas, that never gets to the detention basin. So I know a lot of engineers now, they look at the computers and they go in the Google Earth maps and they go to their local county and their mapping service and they say, oh, I'll go by the aerial maps. That's not the way to do it. I have walked sites that have been as much as 2.3 miles, square miles, trying to make sure that I got the runoff correctly to do the design. And I did walk a significant portion of this site, second time I was up here. And that's with neuropathy in the legs. It's not easy.
I believe you either have read the transcripts or participated through Zoom the applicant's expert witness testimony. Do you recall that?
I have read every one of the transcripts. I have either watched them either through Zoom or sat in this meeting room or in the other meeting room before.
Do you recall whether the applicant's experts said that they walked the site to determine time of concentration?
The applicant's engineer clearly stated that he did not, and he said, I don't know anybody who ever does it anymore. Well, I do. And you have to do it.
Let's move on to significant grading as an issue. The applicant testified the amount of grading will not be significant. Do you agree?
No.
In paragraph 28 of your letter report, you have almost a full-page discussion on significant grading. You also reference, I believe it's attachment 3 to the letter report. Do I have that correct?
That's correct.
Open-ended question, discuss significant grading and the relevance of attachment 3.
As I said, we took the drawings in PDF format, we inputted them into AutoCAD, and then I had marked up the areas that I felt was significant grading based upon the PDF, based upon the pre and the post contour lines. And one of my young engineers who was got an associate degree in computers, AutoCAD, calculated those areas, and they are included, I think, in Appendix 3. We came up with a total of 58.31 acres are being regraded, and I did not catch it all. Now, the significance of that is that you're removing the good soil. He's not putting it back. You're trying to take and maximize the amount of solar panels, which is contrary to the DEP's policy that you should not do mass grading. DEP wants to maintain the original vegetation. So those are the main reasons. And then, of course, when you try to do the decommissioning, you now have to bring in massive, massive amounts of soil if you're going to try to restore this back to agriculture use. You got to bring back at least 7 inches, which is your AP horizon, and probably more than that. And I thought I had a figure in here as the number of tons of that soil. It would be massive. You'd have dump trucks running in every day of the week for months.
It's actually attachment 3, not appendix.
Fantastic.
Let's walk through with the board that attachment. It's mountain trail, solar, post-development drainage area maps. And you only use where the solar panels are. You didn't include the roads, the substation, or the inverter.
No, I did not include the substation. I only included areas where there were solar panels installed. I did not include in the original design, there was one area that was mass grading for a detention basin. It's up on the Fredericks property down near, is it Monument Road on the corner? Did not include that.
Looking at, you have sheet DA 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, and 107. What is DA 102?
Those are the drainage area maps. You'll notice that DA 101 is missing. That's because I did not find any mass grading on 101.
And those are part of the applicant's conditional use application?
Yes.
So, for example, under DA 102, what does the A1, A2, and A3?
They're the areas that I mapped out for my engineer to take, bring into AutoCAD and calculate the area.
And the SF?
SF is square foot.
And you have a code 43,500?
43,000 square feet to an acre.
Okay, one at a time.
43,000, well, that's bad.
No, you wait for me to finish.
Oh,
I tell you, the court report is unique, you know? 43,560 square feet equals 1 acre.
yes,
What does the BKC signify on this exhibit?
acre.
No, BKC.
Oh, that was the soil types.
Okay. So for drainage area 102, and this is post-development,
Yes,
that's the type of soil for DA 102.
right.
And then if you look all the way through 7, it always just shows the different soils. And you have identified in your letter report all the various codes for the soil in paragraph 22 and 25. So for the board's reference, 22 and 25 go into detail about the type of soils, the slopes for that soil, and the number of acres on the project. You then total it up, and your totals are 2,540,200,000 square feet, which is 58.31 acres.
That's correct.
What is C slopes versus D slopes?
If you look at the soil classification in, let's take drainage area, DA 104. You notice that A1 is 1.03 acres, and it says WED. As Toby explained in the last testimony, a 0 to 3% slope has a follower of A, 3 to 8 has a follower of B, 8 to 15 has a C, and 15 to 25 has a D. So I broke the 58.31 acres down, going back and looking at the NCRS web soil survey that was part of the, I believe, the wetland delineation report. And I broke down the mass grading areas into whether they were slopes that were C slopes, which would be 8 to 15, or whether they were D slopes, which would be 15 to 25.
So in your professional opinion, the stormwater management design does not minimize development on steep slopes, and in fact, there is significant grading that is required for post-development conditions?
Yes.
And do you hold that opinion to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Yes, and I did not map all of the areas. I just looked at major areas.
Understood. Let's move on to the next subtopic. This is the managed release concept. And I think you already discussed some of this, but let me just summarize. The MRC document we've marked as Exhibit 020. Apologies to the board, I didn't make enough copies for everybody, but at least I had one for you. In your letter report, you discuss MRC in paragraphs 29 through 34.
Sorry, what number is this?
20. You good?
Yep.
The applicant's expert is proposing the use of managed release concept. Now, if I recall the testimony, their contention is that for purposes of conditional use, they're not required to comply with stormwater management. However, they have produced a report. They do contend it does comply with the stormwater management ordinance. So one of their key concepts, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the use of managed release concept. Could you describe for the board what is managed release concept?
As I said before, it's a fairly new concept that DEP came up with to be used specifically on sites that will not infiltrate. We have requirements in all the stormwater ordinances and also in the MPDS permitting that you must, it's not an if or would like to, you must remove the difference between the pre and post 2-year storm runoff volume. You've got to either infiltrate it, plants in there that will take and do evapotranspiration, reuse it, you can use it for a wash bay or something, or evaporate. But you must completely remove it from the system so that it doesn't discharge from the basin. So a lot of people, especially in some areas of Lehigh County, in some areas of Berks County, where I come from, we have karst formations that develop sinkholes. So DEP a couple of years ago said, we'll use this new concept, and you only qualify if your site does not infiltrate. And then you have to do this massive, thorough investigation to prove it doesn't infiltrate. And basically what it does is you're going to get partial credit by your basins having vegetation. You're then going to have to try to put in vegetated swales. some infiltration trenches if you can, to take that volume between the pre and post 2 year and eliminate it from ever getting to the stream. But they don't qualify for it because they haven't done what they should have. The site doesn't qualify because the site has what we call category B soils, which, as I said before, infiltrate at 0.2 to 0.8 inches per hour, and the standard is if it's over 0.1 all the way up to 10 inches per hour, you can infiltrate. So, you know, I looked at the soils, I looked at the soil horizons, I looked at the Natural Resources Conservation Service's website as to make sure that they have properly categorized soils, and they have. And these soils should infiltrate. And they're not using any infiltration. The big problem with this is you've got around this whole family farm houses on private wells. Private wells with low yields. And they're proposing not to infiltrate, to take that water and send it to the creek. How is that going to impact these private wells? Nonetheless, it doesn't qualify or doesn't meet the criteria. As I said before, when you apply the standards, you need a lot more. You need to have 2 basins at every point. I won't go into the technical aspects, but hydraulically, they won't function.
The applicability is on page 2 of Exhibit 020. It says the MRC may be authorized as a post-construction stormwater management best management practice where certain criteria are met. And Bruce, your letter report says in paragraphs 30, 31, 32, you explain why they don't meet certain applicability, and you've testified as such. In
Yes.
paragraph 33, you discuss the DEP review, which is also on page 2 of the managed release concept exhibit. And in your professional opinion, does this site qualify for the use of managed release concept?
My professional opinion, based upon the soil survey maps, no. The applicant has not done the required infiltration testing that DEP would require to even determine if it meets the MRC, management release control requirements. Until such time as he does that, he cannot demonstrate that he has met the requirements. And if he has to come back and redesign, he's going to have many, many more detention basins than he's got right now.
So Bruce, if this is meant to merely be a concept design, as opposed to a full-blown engineering design for land development, does the concept plan meet any professional qualifications?
No, the concept doesn't meet any professional qualifications because the web soil survey mapping is telling you that they will infiltrate, and he's saying they won't infiltrate. There's no basis for his determination that they will not infiltrate. Therefore, there is no basis for his concept of managed release control. You've got to meet that first threshold. You've got to determine whether or not it infiltrates or doesn't. So this concept is basically minimizing the number of basins and maximizing the available area for solar panels.
Let's move on to noise. Although the applicant calls it a sound study, and you and I have gone back and forth over whether it's a sound study or a noise study. So let's start with the following. The applicant's application states all noise generated from the site shall comply with the township's noise regulations. The solar facility has been designed to minimize noise. For example, all of the inverters for the solar facility have been centrally located within the site. There is no express criteria for conditional use in section 615. However, there is a section 608.5 titled Noise Control. In your letter report on page 6 at paragraph 35, you quote an excerpt from section 608.5, capital letter A. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. Did you review the sound study, which is Exhibit 24?
Yes.
Do you have, in your professional opinion, does the sound study demonstrate compliance with section 608.5, capital letter A?
No.
And what is the basis for that opinion?
What's that?
What's the basis for your opinion? You might as well start with paragraph 36 and explain to the board
Okay.
your concerns with what they did and how they did it from an engineering standpoint.
From an engineering standpoint, I have reviewed numerous noise studies for substations. They follow the same principles. I've also reviewed noise studies for landfills. There are really two noise studies, if you want to call them that. There's a noise study that was done by Kimberly Horn, and there's a noise study portion that was done by Tom Cleveland in his health and safety report. The first thing you have to do in a noise study is you have to determine the power level, the sound power level of the sources. The sound power level that was determined by Kimberly Horn was wrong. It is not the proper sound power level by the National Manufacturer of Electrical Equipment Manufacturing. The inverters are at 101 dBA. That is out of the health and safety. That's the correct number for the inverters. With the inverter, you have, some cases, two. And then you also have a step-up 600 volt, 34.5 kV transformer. You have to take and lump the three of them together. The health and safety report looked at sound at the residential property across the street. The zoning ordinance requires sound to be measured at the property line of the generating source. When you take and adjust the sound power level combined, and you then project it to the street, it's not what is in the health and safety report, and I'll get to that. When you look at the substation and you use the proper power sound level for a 69 kV transformer, it's not what Kimberly Horn said. And I use as a reference what we call the National Electric Manufacturers Association TR1 2013, which lists standards for sound power levels for electrical equipment.
With respect to attachment 4 to the letter report,
That's attached to the letter report. And we can go over that.
okay? Now, let's back up. If you recall,
I'm sorry, I just, where is attachment 4 from? What is this?
It's from the, I want to get this right because they always keep changing it. It's from the National Electric Manufacturers Association, Tech Release 1, 2013. These are the people that manufacture electrical equipment. It's an associate standard.
Thank you, I just finished that.
okay, and that's in paragraph 37, actually says what the NEMA is. Bruce, in paragraph 36, the sound study assigned a power level for the 3.6 megawatt inverter. And it said 79 dBA, and my recollection is there was no reference source.
There's no reference. The Kimberly Horn said 79. There was no reference. The health and safety report referenced a previous sound study, and they assigned a level of 101.
Okay, hold on. So the Kimberly report didn't have a reference for 79 dBA.
That's correct.
But the health and safety assessment, which is Exhibit 39 for the record, they did assign a dBA for a 3.6 megawatt inverter. What was that number?
101, and it came from another sound study that they had performed.
Okay.
And they also referenced the tech release.
Now, the sound level for the substation transformer, what did the Kinley Horn sound study, what dBA did they assign to it?
Your paragraph 36. Kimberly Horn had 75. The correct is 83, 84. I think that the health and safety actually had 88. And the 84, 83, 84 come from the tech release.
Now, in paragraph 37, you say that the sound study or noise study, whatever we want to call it, didn't assign a power sound to the ISU. What is an ISU?
Both studies only looked at the inverter. The ISU is the intermediate step-up transformer, or the inverter step-up transformer. In other words, you have two inverters that take the AC and collect it, convert it to DC, and then it goes from 600 volts to 34.5 kV. And then 34.5 kV is then sent to the substation.
And that's when we talk about attachment 4, correct?
That's right.
Okay. Do you want to explain table 1 and what you highlighted and why you highlighted it? It looks like that's where you got the numbers 83, 84.
What I highlighted over there is the KV bill rating, which is 80,000 or 80. That's the one closest to it, depending upon what your bill is, 1, 2, or 3. And I said it's 83, 84. I don't know where the health and safety came up with 88, because that would be a 200 kV transformer, not the 69.
Okay, and then table 2 on the next page of attachment 4.
Table 2, the next page is the that's the 63 is for the ISU. As close as you can call it, the inverter step up.
I'm looking at table 2, audible sound levels for liquid immersed network transformers.
Yeah.
Okay, and you highlighted 63 for
Yeah.
sound level. Okay, I thought you said 64. That's why I was-
No, 60.
60.
63. 63.
Do you want to discuss what you're saying in paragraph 38 about they didn't calculate the combined power?
The health and safety report indicated that it was negligible if you included the inverter step-up transformer. So what I did, just out of a scientific basis of trying to get accurate information, I went and I combined the two inverters and the one step-up transformer, and I come out with 104.1, slightly higher. But if you're going to do scientific study, you use scientific data. You don't just dismiss something that it's not there, it's there. It's not, you don't have 101 and 101, you don't have 202. It goes from 101 to 104.1. In paragraph 39, I then calculated the noise level at the property boundary. I went in the maps and I calculated the distance. 2 inverters and 1 ISU, 480 feet to Blau Road. I come up with 50.26 dBA. And the Kimberly Horns comes up with 45. For the two inverters and one ISU at 190 feet to Monument Road, I come up with 58.55. They came up with 45. They come up with 45 for everything. The one inverter and one ISU at 290 feet to Kloss Road, I tried to pick the ones that were closest to the property boundary. I come up 51.76 versus 45. And then the electrical substation transformer at 140 feet to Kloss Road. Now this is using the 8384. I come up with 46.08 versus 45. So they did not use the right data in the report. They didn't use the right distances in the report. They didn't combine the power sources of the report.
Did the applicant consider or analyze sound or noise during construction?
No.
Showing you what we marked as Exhibit O24, what is this document?
This is something that I pulled out of the Federal Highway Administration. I was looking for information on construction equipment, what noise levels are. And the Federal Highway Administration has come up with what they consider to be acceptable values for construction equipment.
And you copied, it looks like section 9.4 RCNM inventory. What is RCNM?
Yes.
So what is RCNM? If you know.
We're going 9.4, all right.
Not to worry, but talk to me about table 9.1. What did you highlight and why?
Oh, I highlighted that line because of the fact that their noise levels are figured at 50 feet from the source. This inventory data came from the New York Central Artery Tunnel Project. But sound power levels are calculated at the source 3 feet from the source. This was explained in both of the studies. The Federal Highway Administration looked at them and said, this is what we're getting 50 feet away. So what you have to do is you have to take and plug it back into the formula, and you have to account for the increase in the power level going back to 47 feet. You want to continue?
No, do you want to say anything else about noise?
Yeah, if you look on here, all these levels are, most of them are 85 dBA at 50 feet. What is interesting is that when you get into impact pile drivers or hydraulic pile drivers, they go up to 95 dBA. Now, every one of those steel posts going in there is going to be hydraulically shoved into the ground. The detention basins are going to be done right at the road, right next to the road. So you have now during construction, if you add 30 dBA to account for the 47 feet difference in the way these levels were calculated, instead of having a source of 101 that's 400 feet away, you now have a source that's 120 that's 50 feet away. Significant difference. And the sound level is measured on the property or at the property boundary. The health and safety sound study looked at the sound level across the street in the neighbor's property, which is not what the ordinance calls for. That's all.
Okay. Bruce, you okay? You want to take a break before we finish?
No,
Are you okay?
I'm okay for that.
Okay, board's okay also? Okay.
All right.
All right, in the applicant's narrative, on paragraph 11 for the record, it says, Mountain Trail will utilize solar panels that are designed to maximize the absorption, that's absorption with a B, of sunlight and limit the reflectivity of sunlight. The solar panels will be coated with anti-glare material to minimize the potential for concentrated reflection and/or glint/glare, period. Bruce, do we know the manufacturer of the solar panels?
We do not know the manufacturer of solar panels.
How do we know they'll be designed to maximize the absorption of sunlight?
The applicant has suggested two types of solar panels, has not specified the manufacturer, and has not specified that they have a reflective coating that will reduce glare.
How do we know they will limit the reflectivity of sunlight?
We have no knowledge, the applicant has no knowledge of that.
How do we know the panels will be coated with anti-glare material?
We have no knowledge of that, the applicant has no knowledge of that.
And how do we know the coating will minimize the potential for concentrated reflection and glint/glare?
If the panels are a flat solar panel, there will not be concentrated, but there will be glare. But the applicant has not determined yet what panels he's going to use. Therefore, basically, he can't say anything that qualifies as no impacts from glare.
The zoning ordinance, that's section 615, subpart N as in Nancy. Solar energy systems shall be located on a building, lot, or parcel in a manner that avoids directing concentrated solar radiation or glare onto any adjacent property or public way. In paragraph 34, the applicant claims they demonstrate compliance with this provision with the following sentence. The solar facility has been designed in a manner that avoids directing concentrated solar radiation or glare onto any adjacent property or public way. The applicant has prepared the solar glare and glint analysis report, which has been marked as applicant exhibit 37. Is the purpose of the report to determine whether the project complies with section 615N of the zoning ordinance?
No, it does not. The ordinance says you must avoid. The applicant's report indicates that there will be yellow glare. Therefore, he is not avoiding glare. He even has yellow glare with 40-foot vegetative buffers. So his report does not support his contention that he meets the zoning ordinance.
Okay, but to clarify, the purpose of the report was to attempt to demonstrate compliance, correct?
Yes.
And it's your professional opinion that the report does not demonstrate compliance with that section of the ordinance?
It does not, because you still have glare.
Did the report rely upon something called the Solar Glare Hazard Analysis Tool?
Yes.
Which I guess I'll refer to by the acronym SGHAT.
Yes.
Be prepared, or you prepared?
Thank you.
Showing you what we prepared and marked as Exhibit 021. This is the cover page of Exhibit 37, the Solar Glare and Glint Analysis Report prepared by Kimberly Horn. But we copied certain pages for the convenience of the board rather than having to refer back and forth to Exhibit 37. The second page of the exhibit, could you identify that, please?
Second page of the exhibit is out of Appendix A, which is the existing conditions with a 6-foot vegetative buffer. And this is for PV arrays A, B, and C. He broke down the study into 4 areas. As explained in the report, I think there's something like 17 or 18 different arrays. This one is the one closest to over Route 222, or over Route 22. And what he has shown here is its PV array A, B, and C. He says that his tilt angle is 30 degrees. He says that his orientation is 180, which means the panels are facing south, which is consistent with the plans. And he says the height above ground to be 5 feet. And then he lists 15 vertexes, which is the location of these 3 arrays. Don't know which ones are in which array, but in that array on the parcel would be the Estapi parcel closest to 22. He's got 15 points that he's inputting into the computer program to calculate the glare.
I think we should go through the paragraphs on page 7 of your letter report.
Okay. Page which paragraph?
Page 7 of 14.
All right.
You with me?
With you.
Under the section glare, 43 is an excerpt from the ordinance, correct?
43 is an excerpt from the ordinance, and it says avoids. 44.
Okay, hold on. You highlighted the word avoids. Does section 615N address concentrated glare?
615, and it just says you cannot have concentrated solar radiation or glare.
It doesn't say concentrated
It does
glare.
not say concentrated glare. It just says glare.
Paragraph 44, could you discuss with the board and the audience what are you referring to in paragraph 44?
On page 3 of the report, not of the appendix, but page 3 of the report, he states that there are 14 observation points surrounding this total 330-acre farm. The appendix A in the report does not list 14, it lists 9. It does not mark 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So nobody knows where they're at.
So what's an observation point?
Observation is that he's not conducting a scientific investigation. And I want to say my master's degree is in operational research. It's how you conduct a study. I'm not saying that he should have had 10 or 11 or 12 or 15 or 20. What I'm saying is he said he had 14, but he hasn't identified 14. He's only identified 9.
So you're not able to replicate that study?
I cannot replicate that study.
Paragraph 45.
Anybody can go online and you can find out what the optimum tilt angle is for a panel in this location. Now, he says in his report that he is optimizing the solar panel farm, which means he has to optimize the tilt angle. They use a number of 30 degrees. The actual optimum tilt angle for this longitude, latitude, and it's really the latitude is how far north you are. Because what happens is the sun not only rotates, but it tilts. The spring and the fall, you will get the same amount of solar energy. In the winter, when you tilt away from the sun, you get far less. And when you tilt toward the sun, you get more. So I would have expected there's going to be a scientific study that he would have put in the right tilt angle. He would have put in 31.8.
Now, the exhibit Oath 21, at the bottom it says page 3 of 48, and you highlighted in blue tilt, and that's says 30.0, and that's what we were just
That's what I was talking about. I highlighted what his input was.
Okay. Paragraph 46 of your report.
The report lumps panels into these A through P are how the arrays are listed. But he lumps them then into 4 different groups, A, B, C, and then it's got D and a bunch more. But no place in the report does he say on the drawing, where is solar panel array A? If you look at this, he says this is panel array. It's actually PD1 is what it is, but it's panel arrays A, B, and C. But no place in the report does he say, where's A, where's B, where's C? There's no map. You can't replicate the report if you don't know where he's coming, where he's signing his values.
I'm sorry, I'm just looking. Bruce on Zoom, are you here? Okay, the picture was blank. I just wanted to make sure you were hearing the testimony. Never mind, go back on mute. Sorry, Bruce, the expert. I got concerned when I saw the blank Zoom. We're up to paragraph 47. Appendix A, the component data. What is well, you highlighted the height above ground, and what was that height?
Height above ground is 5 foot. This is supposed to be the height of the centroid of the panel above the ground surface. Now, he has previously submitted a small diagram showing tilt angle to be determined, height to be determined, and he's indicated that the panel will be 1.5 feet or 18 inches off the ground. The correct way to calculate it is to calculate from the center of the centroid. So if you have a panel 10 feet long on a 30-degree angle, you then have to calculate it's 5 feet, but it's a 30-degree angle, which is a little bit less, and then you have to add your height above ground. So when I calculate this for a 30-degree angle, it's not 5 feet above ground, it's actually 5.77. So his input data, once again, is not accurate.
So in paragraph 47, your reference to Exhibit 12, that's Applicant's Exhibit 12 that I pulled out earlier this evening. It says that the drip edge of the panel will be a minimum of 18 inches above ground.
18 inches above ground. That's, of course, in his Exhibit 12.
Right, even though we don't know.
Even though we don't know what the panels are, he's just saying the bottom of the rack is 18 inches above ground.
Okay. Paragraph 48.
Let me go back to 47 though.
Go ahead.
Because if he has a maximum ability of 20 foot of solar panels, then the centroid would move upward, and it could be as high as 11 feet off the ground. So if it's 11 feet off the ground, then all of a sudden now it's higher than in relationship to the buffer. So now it's coming in higher than a low buffer. Okay, you want to go to 48?
Yes, sir.
I went and talked to Sandia Labs. I asked them one question: is the current main? What's that? Oh, they said something.
You're saying?
It's the same.
No, all right, so all right.
Hold on.
I got the user manual for the program, and this is the quote from the user manual.
Hold on. Is that attachment 5?
That's attachment 5.
Okay, hold on. Attachment 5 is the SG-HAT user manual version 2.0.
Yes.
And you copied page 4.
Yes.
Excuse me, and highlighted a certain section. Which I believe is what you quoted, paragraph 48.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
This is the user manual that was quoted by the applicant in his study. And it says, SGHAT, solar glare hazard analysis tool, assumes that the PP array is aligned with a plane defined by the total height of the conditions outlined in the Google map. For more accuracy, the user should perform runs using minimum and maximum values for the vertex heights to bound the height of the plane containing the solar array. Doing so will expand the range of observed solar glare when compared to results using a single height value. If he can put these panels on there up to a height of 20 feet, then he should run a run at the 5 feet and run a run at the 11 foot.
And just to clarify, the total height of the coordinates outlined in the Google map, I think you listed.
Well, yes, and that's what they did. They went in and they got coordinated Google map. They put the site on the Google map. They pulled the coordinates off the Google map. They pulled the elevations off the Google map.
So it's your opinion that the glare and glint analysis does not meet the design input assumptions of the computer program they relied upon?
Computer program says you should. They need to do that. They assume one height, which was lower the height, which would be more buffering. They should have gone to what would have been the max height, as required by the manual.
Okay, let's discuss the buffers in paragraph 49.
In paragraph 49, I've also given you in the appendix a page, I think it's page 5. He indicated in the report that he had added buffers to Gruber and Hess at 40 feet. And this is in the appendix B, which is the second run with the buffers. In the first run, he has a buffer at 6 feet, which should be 8 foot, but he has a buffer at 6. Well, what he didn't indicate to anybody that he also put in buffers on Weil Road, Gruber Road, and Sunday Road. So when you look at the outputs and you're saying, why in the world is the glare being reduced in Weil Road if there's no buffer there? So he's misleading in the report as to what he did.
Okay, paragraph 50.
Just 1 through 50. Oh, 50, that's the explanation of what he actually did. He put in buffers, not just on 2 streets, but he put them in on 5.
Okay. Then paragraph 51, you quote Mr. Cleveland's testimony regarding glare. Do you want to recite what you quoted in paragraph 51?
In his testimony, Mr. Cleveland, who was the health and safety, his report was dated October 23rd. The Kinley Horns, no, I'll take that back. His report dated October 23rd. He says here that there's not much change in glare from a plane height of 6 feet to a 40-foot height. Well, first of all, the buffer should have been 8 feet, not 6 foot. But if you look at the table in the report, the Kinley Horn report, there is quite a bit of reduction with the 40-foot buffer. So the buffers do work. They don't totally eliminate the glare. They don't avoid the glare like the ordinance says you must. That's it.
Okay. In your professional opinion, does the glare and glint analysis report demonstrate compliance with section 615A of the solar ordinance?
Looking at it from an operational research perspective of whether or not the data inputs and the way the study was run, they have not, in 2 cases, they have not demonstrated that it meets the zoning ordinance. First, because the data inputs are not fully accurate, and secondly, report still says that there will be glare on certain sections of certain roads, even with a 40-foot buffer. And the ordinance is explicit, says you must avoid glare.
Bruce, is there anything that I may have missed this evening? Anything you want to cover that hasn't been covered in your report or your testimony today?
I don't think so, but I'm sure Mr. Gallagher will ask me some questions that will raise some issues.
Do you hold all of the opinions that you gave tonight to a reasonable degree of professional certainty?
Yes, I do, based upon my 57 years of engineering and construction, yes.
All right, we finish with the record, we turn this over to cross-examination.
All right, we're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we'll resume the cross-examination. we're gonna go back on the record. Mr. Gallagher, cross-examination.
Thank you. So I'll go through some of these subjects. I try to go in the same order that you did. You were testifying with respect to height, and I believe it's your testimony that every portion of a commercial solar energy system has to be 20 feet or less.
That's correct. The ordinance clearly specifies substations and transmission lines.
Okay, so do you have the relevant portions of the zoning ordinance with you?
That's the relevant portion of the zoning ordinance.
You have the definition, you have the...
Yes, I do. Hold on. Definition of commercial solar energy.
You have that?
I have it in front of me.
And I believe you testified, because you designed 49 substations,
Yes.
and they were all above 20 feet.
All those that had 69 kVA, yes, were above 20 foot.
And it's your testimony that it would be impossible, and I see looking at the definition, commercial solar energy system. The second sentence says, commercial solar energy systems consist of one or more freestanding ground or roof-mounted solar collector devices. Solar-related equipment and other accessory structures and buildings, including light reflectors, concentrators, and heat exchangers, substations, electrical infrastructure, transmission lines, or other pertinent structures. And I believe he said that it would be impossible to have at least transmission lines.
I said it'd be very difficult, and I said that the applicant has not demonstrated that he can meet the standard.
So you didn't testify as an electrical expert, correct?
I testified as an individual with expertise in substation design.
Okay, and I thought you said that it would be clearly impossible to have transmission
I
lines.
did not say clearly impossible, if you want to check the record. I do not believe I said clearly impossible. I mean, I've seen people, cases where we've actually put 69 kVs underground. But clearly, I said that the applicant has not demonstrated that he met the height requirement.
So it's your opinion that even roof-mounted solar would have to be less than 20 feet as well?
I'm not talking about roof mounted.
But you said everything in a commercial solar energy system has to be less than 20 feet.
In this application, all of his electrical equipment, he does not have any roof mounted. All of his electrical equipment has to be less than 20 feet. When you look at the 615, the requirements, if you want to read those.
Yes, please.
All right. I have it here someplace. 615E, no part of a ground-mounted commercial solar energy system or its supporting structure shall exceed a height of 20 feet.
It's ground-mounted commercial solar energy system, a defined term.
I think it's fairly clear, you either have it ground mounted or you have it on a roof.
It was just a question. It's ground-mounted commercial solar energy system, a defined term.
In the ordinance, I don't think it is.
Are you familiar with what the maximum building height is in the agricultural district?
No, it's irrelevant.
Why is it?
Because we're not talking about buildings about a building. The applicant is not proposing to build a building. He's proposing to build a solar farm.
Well, there are, you said you heard the testimony. You
Yes, I
listened
heard
to all
the
the
testimony.
So there is a building proposed.
There is a maintenance building proposed, and if that exceeded 20 feet, then that would not meet part of the definition of a support structure.
The building's a support structure.
Well, it supports the solar farm, does it not?
I don't know that we're reading that the same way. And you said you also reviewed the ordinance, correct?
I reviewed the section of ordinances that pertain to my testimony, yes.
Okay. And are you aware that there are exceptions to the height regulations in the zoning ordinance?
Yes, but it does not apply in this case.
And why is that?
Because it does not apply to a solar, ground-mounted solar farm. It's not, it just does not apply to what the applicant is proposing.
Why is that?
Well, he's not proposing a communication tower, which is an exception.
Well, I believe communications towers have their own height regulations.
But he's not, but the communication towers in the agricultural district have an exception.
Well, no, there's a commercial communications tower can only be 20 feet above what the maximum height is.
Is the applicant proposing a communication tower?
No.
All right, then the question is, I don't know how I
So that's
answer
a
your question.
specific, well, you said you reviewed the ordinance, and I'm just asking.
I
So,
reviewed the ordinance as it pertains to the applicant's proposal.
okay, so section 601.3 of the zoning ordinance, that provides exceptions to height regulations. And it states, the height limitations contained herein do not apply to spires, towers, cupolas, silos, antennas, water tanks, ventilators, chimneys, televisions, or radio towers, or other appurtenances usually required to be placed above the roof level and not intended for human occupancy.
Well, first of all, you're not putting anything above the roof level, and none of those things are part of the application for a solar farm. So it's not applicable.
I don't believe that there's anything proposed for human occupancy.
No.
Who regulates stormwater in Pennsylvania?
It's regulated by basically two entities, the township and the DEP.
And does that go for erosion and sedimentation as well?
Yes,
And grading?
yes.
Okay. And what is an NPDES permit?
National Pollutant Elimination System permit is for, depending upon what you're doing. An NPDES PAG is for construction activities. And then PAG 03 is for industrial activities. The PAG 13 is your municipal septic storm sewer system permit.
And will one be required for this project?
One will be required.
So all the testimony with respect to the FAQ in chapter 102, this will be reviewed and approved by who? The NPDES permit?
The NPDES permit will be reviewed and approved by DEP, but if the township has an MS4 permit, then they will be on the hook for any pollutant that comes from this development.
Did you review any of the Great Valley Consultants review letters?
Yes.
So you reviewed the responses there
I
too?
reviewed the responses or the defer of a response.
Okay. You didn't have that listed in the documents that you reviewed, so I just wanted to make.
Well, I did review them.
And have you reviewed the comments? Are you aware that the township's engineer has taken the position that stormwater, erosion, sedimentation control, all of that will have to be addressed in detail at the land
I'm aware that it
development
will have
process?
to be addressed in detail in the land development plan, yes.
And that this exhibit 32, the stormwater management plan that you testified at length to, is not required for conditional use.
It's not required for conditional use. The township engineer asked it to be submitted. The applicant submitted it and made it an exhibit of the conditional use hearing. So therefore, it is part of the conditional use hearing.
Because it was asked to by the township.
Yes, I think that, when you're putting in 330 acres of earth disturbance, that the township has a right to really understand what's going to happen with that 330 acres as far as erosion and sediment control.
And with respect to the MRC, were you aware that that was done as a worst-case scenario?
It was not done as a worst case, it was done as a concept design. It is not a worst case scenario.
Would that take up the most amount of area?
No, it will not take up the most amount of area as it's currently designed, because it would need numerous waivers from the DEP, because he doesn't meet the criteria of maximum drainage area of 3 acres, when he has some drainage areas up to 45 acres.
With respect to noise,
Yes.
does it change your opinion if the study did not use sound power levels?
I don't understand your question.
That the model didn't use sound power levels?
I still don't understand your question. How are they going to model if they don't use that power levels?
Well, let me ask you, take a step back. Are you aware of the difference between sound power levels and sound pressure levels?
Yes.
Does it change your opinion if the study did not use sound power levels?
If he presents a study that uses sound power levels instead of sound pressure levels instead of sound power, then you'd have to review that to determine whether or not it's applicable to the ordinance. Because what we're talking about here is what the sound level is at the property boundary. How you generate that is a question for the study to address.
Again, you did not use any modeling.
I do not need that.
You don't have to. Okay.
I mean, if I know what the sound power level, if I know the sound pressure, sound power level is the source, is a very simple calculation to calculate what it is at property value.
Okay. And does your calculations take into account topography?
It's a straight line.
And you're testifying that your calculations are more accurate than the modeling data?
I'm testifying that the input data is more accurate than his input data. So therefore, his study is not accurate because he did not put the proper inputs into his computer program.
So again, you reviewed the zoning ordinance. Are you aware that construction is exempt from the zoning? Noise from construction is exempt from the zoning ordinance?
I'd have to check the ordinance to see if that's true.
Just a few more questions.
And I'm not sure the construction is exempt.
With respect to glare, I believe this is what you testified to during board hearing. This is the first time you've ever testified with respect to glare.
Yes. There's always a first time for everything. Experts don't get to be experts unless they testify the first time.
And you, so, I mean, I guess the answer to this question is self-evident, but you have no prior experience with the solar glare hazard analysis tool.
What I testify to is the methodology of the study, irrespective of what the study is, based upon my operational research degree.
Again, but you've never used it before.
There's some programs I've never used before that I've testified to, and whether or not they meet the assumptions in the studies.
Okay, fair enough. Just gonna check. On decommissioning, again, I think in your study, I call it a study, but your letter, is there I'm looking at paragraph 21. You have a determination that the clean fill policy would apply. My understanding is that only applies to something that requires solid waste management permit.
No, that's false. Clean fill policy applies to solid waste, but soil is considered a solid waste. It's not considered a hazardous, but a solid waste. And the clean fill policy basically says that if you're going to take any soil, brick, there's certain exemptions, but if you're going to take it off-site, then you have to determine before it goes off-site with a sampling protocol that it's not contaminated to certain standards in the clean fill policy. If he were to take and leave all the soil on the site, never take it off the site, then the clean fill policy would not apply. But if he's going to take the substation and restore it to agricultural, I'm sure the township's not going to say I'm sure, because I don't know for sure. But I don't think the township would say we'll leave a pile out there, a couple thousand cubic yards of crushed stone and stuff. There are exceptions to the clean fill policy, yes.
Okay, but you don't have any support that a solar facility has ever been used or, say, decommissioned and reclaimed, requiring compliance with the clean fill policy?
No, I've seen substations in Pennsylvania that I have worked on, which is part of the solar farm project, that did require compliance with the clean fill policy before they were allowed to be decommissioned.
I have no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Ms. Delonic, do you have any cross-examination?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Mr. Hartman,
I have a couple quick ones.
can you come down?
Okay, Bruce, wetlands, were they properly addressed, or can't you talk to that?
I did not, I'm not an expert in wetlands. I will not address whether they
Okay.
were or were not.
That's fine. Then you talked about the 58 acres being graded.
Yes.
You had, you confused us back there.
Uh-oh.
You said you're grading land that's 25% slope?
Part of the 58 acres is slopes greater, 15 to 25, and part of them are slopes 8 to 15. The 25% and greater have been blocked out as not part of the solar farm. And in fact, in the revised drawings, which were not submitted as an exhibit, so probably I shouldn't say anything about it, there's probably twice as much of the 25 and greater slopes on those drawings.
The 58 acres that are graded, does that include the retention ponds?
No.
Or is that extra?
It's not, none is an retention ponds. It's all within the location where the solar panel is going to be installed.
And how many more acres would you guesstimate that is? Or I don't even know how many ponds there are. I keep hearing different amounts.
I would not venture a guess of how many more. I think probably I found probably 85 to 90% of them, but I would not venture how many more. would not want to. I think 58 is rather stiffy to begin with.
Okay, and my last question, I don't know if you can answer it, and he might
No,
object
yeah,
to
sir,
this.
no.
The panels, if they leach, let me see how I want to put this. Leach chemicals from the panels when they're installed or when they're up there, do you feel that will get into the well water of the people around there?
I'm not a hydrogeologist. I don't know whether they will leak. I don't know what extent they will leak, and I will not offer an opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. and Mrs. Young. Mr. Balthaser.
No questions.
Thank you. Ms. Fowler.
No questions.
Mr. Fowler.
Yeah, I have a question.
Come on up.
Thanks. You spoke at length about the stormwater plan that was that you had reviewed. I wanted to ask you about the 2-year runoff criteria that you talked about. Would you be able to, based on what you've seen, would you be able to estimate if runoff would be mitigated or actually made worse with storms that are less than a 2-year and also more than a 2-year?
I'll be very careful with what I say on this. There are some technical problems with the HydroCAD modeling that he is confusing links and reaches. DEP requires that you must permanently remove the difference between the post-2-year runoff volume and the pre. At the point of interest, which should be the point of interest where it goes into the streams. I have not looked at detail in his, at his pre-post calculations. So I will not offer an opinion of whether or not it's going to be, better or worse. It's supposed to be better. It's supposed to be region-free. But I will not offer a professional opinion as to the technical aspects of his report, other than to say there does appear to be some input errors there.
That was all I had.
Members of the board have questions for this witness?
Bruce, to follow up on Bruce Hartman's comment about the grading of the site. So I've seen some solar fields go in, and basically they take the topography where it's at, and they pound post and mount panels on top. From what you understand from the applicant's submission here, on these slopes of 15% range, are they going to put terraces in where the rows of panels are? Is that what you understand? Or is these panels going to be posted and driven on the contour?
Looking at the PDF files of the drawings, not the AutoCAD files, but I looked at the PDF contour lines, superimposed on pre. And what it appears to me is that he is just doing mass grading. He's not doing any terracing. I do not see terraced areas where he would be putting the soil panels. He is basically reducing, as I said, what appears to me to be the 15 to 25% slopes down to below 15. And then redirecting stormwater from the original, in 2 cases, from the original discharge points off the property. One of those goes to a wetland in the stream, so he's now reducing the flow to the stream. But I won't say that's good, bad, or indifference because it's not been calculated. But no, I do not see terracing.
So what's the purpose of stripping the soil then? If you're not...
It's just strictly as I look at the drawings, it's to get these down to 15% slopes so that he doesn't have to fight DEP and put in all these extra measures that the frequently asked questions criteria would require.
So they're leveling the site.
They're leveling the site. They're probably going to bring in a bulldozer and a grader. If the way that frequently asked questions reads is that if you're above 15%, then you have to put in additional PMP measures. You have to put in water bores. You have to put in berms. You have to put in vegetated swales, anything that will slow down accelerated erosion. So if you take and reduce that from 15 or 18 or 25% down to 15, then those measures aren't required. And it opens up more area for panels.
So, do you have any expertise in geology, soil structure?
My master's degree, actually, University of Missouri Rockland, was in soils.
Okay. So if you take a site like that and strip the soil, and then 40 years later you put back down 7 inches of topsoil, what kind of crops are going to grow in that?
I don't think you can grow crops. If he takes out the AP horizon, AP1 horizon, and BW1 horizon, and which is the loam and the channel loam, then the crops really, and I'm not an agricultural specialist, but I think he's going to go someplace between 7 and 14 inches to take and turn this back into agricultural crops. I don't think you can grow, he's got that soil there now. He's got that layer there now when he's farming. And the way the ordinance reads, he has to restore it back to its original existing condition. It doesn't say that, you can go halfway. It says restore. Restore means to make back to original.
Mr. Clark, any redirect?
I had a couple of questions.
Unfortunately, I don't think that's particularly possible.
Well, how's that? He's getting asked questions by everybody.
Use the mic.
There's no redirect, so there's no recross.
All right, he's right there. I only have 2 questions for him.
The witness is excused.
Well, I would just like the record to reflect that he was asked questions I could not even ask. He raised new matters in his cross-examination, so to speak. How would you call it cross-examination when there's nobody else opposed to this application? It was essentially direct testimony being asked by other opposing parties. They're not cross-examining him in the adversarial sense, so all of his answers were as if they were direct.
This is the nature of our system that is sometimes not as we would like it to be. That said, given that the rules of evidence are not strictly construed, and in the interest of justice, I will allow you to ask your 2 questions.
You had referenced plans that were submitted but weren't included in the record. Those refer to the plans that were submitted by the applicant in January.
No, those include what they made the January 24th. They were never submitted. They were submitted with the response comments to the township engineer.
And so you reviewed those.
I looked at it very briefly, only to determine whether or not they had identified additional, what they consider to be steep slopes, which would be greater than 25%. And that's what the township engineer asked me to report on the plans.
And how did you get those plans? Who gave those to you?
I don't know. I don't know whether, I have them in my file folder, but I don't know how I got them. Whether they were part of the original or some package.
I was just curious.
I don't know how I went back and checked to see whether Bill had sent me them, and I don't have an email from them. But I do have, they have a different revision date on them. They have a 3rd revision date. These only have revision 1 and 2. But I did not go through them and look at great detail. I just said, all right, you said in the review letter that they had mapped the slopes, the steep slopes, 25% in grade. I know he said 25%, but steep slopes as the township engineer had requested, and I just looked at a briefing and said, yeah, for example, down near Monument Road, there's wooded areas down there that are now mapped as steep slopes and wooded areas. And they also moved the detention basin that's down there that was in the steep slope, which was one of the comments from the township engineer review. But I can't tell you for certain. I mean, I have boxes of records.
I was just curious, because Mr. Cluck said he hasn't received them or has been able to review them as of a couple minutes before this hearing started.
Well, I'll put it this way. I went back and looked to see whether I had any link to them that Mr. Fleck would have given me, and I checked all my emails to see whether Mr. Fleck had sent to me an email. And he said he had them. I sent back and I said, I have it. You know, that's probably 2 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
But they have not been submitted as evidence.
Mr. Gallagher, at the beginning of this evening's session, you had asked to reserve additional cross-examination based on the fact that you received this witness's report today. Do you still wish to reserve that cross-examination?
I do. I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to review the report. I'm not saying that we will use that. I just would like the opportunity to go through the report more detail.
Okay. Mr. Haig, are you available on February 29th at 6 p.m. for our next hearing?
Well, it depends what my wife tells me.
I can't help you.
What is February 29th?
It's leap day.
It's leap day, or leap day.
Yes. It's
Thursday?
Thursday.
Yes, it's
I'm
Thursday.
available Thursday.
Okay.
Zoom would be fine as well. I mean,
If you're not available in person and you want to appear by Zoom, I think we figured it out
Well,
finally.
you think you did. Yeah, I'm available. As long as you do it at night.
Yes.
I enjoy driving up here for Mount
All right, you will remain under oath. I will ask you not to speak about your testimony with anyone other than perhaps Mr. Cluck. And then at this point, I believe that the board can entertain a motion to adjourn until February 29th at 6 o'clock p.m. in the large group instruction room of the Hamburg Area High School.
I'd like to make that motion. Do I have a second? All in favor, say aye. Ayes have it.
We are at recess until February 29th, 2024.